Greetings and welcome back once again. Let me know if I can be heard. Let me know if I can be heard. I'll press. Let me know if I can be heard. This is Amuna. Welcome to the conversation. We're going to have a quick little discussion. My countdown is supposed to be playing, but it looks stuck. It looks stuck to me. So let me release it here. And welcome to the conversation. We're not even going to do the countdown today. I'm not there right now. For those who just joined us, you don't know it go already. There's a lot going on, eh? There is a lot coming down the pipe. What's going on, CJ? You can hear me, CJ Judah. Welcome to the conversation. What are your thoughts on the Roe versus Wade, on the Supreme Court overturning this constitutional right to abortion? What are y'all thoughts? Some of the people are. It was playing. Yeah, it was weird. On my side, it just froze because I'm going live from my cell phone. So yeah, we're just gonna rock with it. What are your thoughts on that? Like, people are, I didn't even realize until I came on the computer and I was like, what's going on here? Like live protest and marching in the streets, and I'm like, what's going on, Queen T? I'm like, oh boy. Right? Somebody is angered. I have my own thoughts. I'll ask what's yours, and while you're telling me your thoughts on it, I'm going to read. Let me know if I can still be heard once I switch the screen. The reason I have Handmaid's Tale on here is because I said years ago that this movie right here is real suspect. It's not a movie, it's a series. And in actuality, when I did the research, it was actually a book that was written by a woman, a Canadian author. I forget her name right now. Don't get me to lie. I forgot her name, but she's from Canada. I remember that. And she's an author, and she wrote this book, The Handmaid's Tale. And a couple of years ago, they started turning it into a movie. I keep saying movie, a series. Okay, so if you guys have seen this or have heard about this, let me know, because there's some people at this time that are drawing some similarities between how things are playing out right now and this particular series. So in short, it's crazy. It's all I know is a crazy series, right? It's gonna pull you in. It's crazy. But the long and short of it is that there was some negative population growth going on, and in their thoughts, the feminists have gone out of control. And so there were some people who came in that had an idealistic view of what society should be. And they started passing laws that prohibited women from having bank accounts, women from working, abortions, things of that nature. Now, you know that, I don't know if we've been paying attention to the alarm that has been ringing about negative population growth, especially among European. You see many people not replacing the population. They're having less children. They have more dogs than they do children, essentially, right? And so especially amongst European or white Americans, and this has been a concern, okay? And so seeing this, it's really lining up. CJ said, I watch Handmaid's Tale and it's feeling like, don't it feel like Handmaid's Tale? I'm telling you, it's starting to feel like some Handmaid's Tale vibration going on. Queen T said, I think it's political. However, I feel we have more important arguments at this time. Give us more resources and we can afford our children. Judah says, at this point, I don't care. I was tempted to have an abortion once for all of 2 seconds. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to provide for my child properly, but I got over it fast, so I'm not affected. However, it stops women from getting abortions if her life is in danger or due to rape or incest. That is messed up. You know, and there's so many to deal with this. But if we for 1 second, and put aside the extreme situations, right? And I have to bring a paternity court into this because I've been watching a lot of Judge Lake, right? Right? I've been watching Judge Lake lately. And what I can't wrap my mind around is the degree that society has come to in how loosely when women and men spread themselves. Literally, I heard one yesterday. The man met her on the street, said, hello, you're pretty. And by that night, they're laying down. So a lot of what's going on is this free love type of vibration. And I'm not saying incest and other things are not playing a role, but I've talked about this abortion issue before. I've researched it, and what I'm finding is that to a certain degree, because of its accessibility, because of the fact that it no longer has a stigma on it, there are many people using it, men and women, men advising and women um, uh, either being coerced into it or electing to be using it as birth control, using it as I didn't feel like protecting myself, quote unquote, and therefore they're going to have an abortion, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 abortions, right? At which point, that's not somebody that's beyond incest, or that's beyond this somebody being raped. This is adults or young adults making conscious decisions to exhibit a certain type of behavior that's going to bring them to this point. So I think there's a lot going on right here, that society is loose, brethren. So and the fact that the right to there was a lady I just saw a video, and it hurts me to my stomach. There's actually a documentary that talks about when the people who work in the abortion clinics, right? Because it's easier to talk about something when we don't see the inner workings. It's like the meat industry. If you don't see the cow get murked, you kind of distance from it, right? So the people who worked in these facilities, the doctors who are performing it, the nurses who are there, when you look at the actual procedure, I'm not talking about in emergency situations, to use it as, oops, I can't afford this right now, I'm just going to do this thing. I think there's some disconnect somewhere. There is definitely some disconnect between having sexual intercourse and the product thereof. I've been saying this for years. We have disconnected the act from the outcome. And because men and women, especially men and women, right, disconnect what you're doing from what you expect to come of it, we're surprised. And now we have to go to extreme measures. But this is not a new thing. And that's what I was going to read a little bit of an article that talks about it not being a new thing. But I was going to touch on the handmaidens thing first. In antiquity, you still had people engaging in sexual acts without wanting to have a child from that person. But there was a time in society and culture where the thought was, you're going to engage because you need a child, because you want a child. But because oftentimes the child is not even thought of, you don't even know the person's name. I'm hearing these stories. I'm hearing how many bodies, the younger generation, and I know it's coming from before, but how many people are just, you don't know the person's name, you don't know who the person is, you don't know where they come from, men and women, and you're giving them the most sacred part of who you are to bring another soul into existence. Like I said, the disconnect is what is bringing us to this point that we are in history. That's just my thoughts. Judith says, I feel like the fact that folks use as a birth control is the only reason. Yeah, they're using it as birth control. They're using it as birth control. They're using it as birth control. And I've went over that on this channel. It's not necessarily, something that people like to talk about. I hear a lot of men manispherian. Yes, it's accountability, women accountability day. But bruh, you're the person who's planting the seed. How is it women accountability day when you're planting the seed? There's men and women are bugging out. The disconnect is so crazy. I don't understand what is going on in the mind. I don't get it. I'm like, I'm not that old, fam. The disconnect is so crazy that you think that you put a seed there and holding her accountable. It's Woman Accountability Day. What in the world? No, the body's not sacred. It's very common positive reinforcement. That's how the people are perceiving it. And it started from before, right? And at different points in history, they tighten the reins, they loosen the reins, they tighten the reins, they loosen the reins. It hasn't just been straight throughout. You see the Romans, they was wow. Hold on, this phone, hold on. The Romans were out here, sipping wine and eating grapes and doing wildness. The Indians you see on their walls and on their temples, just straight up debauchery, right? In some, so it's not, yeah. I tell you that paternity could have you caught up, man. And some of the stories, I like the way, I think even just to understand socially what's going on, the way she allows for them to tell the story and for them to take her back to the beginning and how it started, and to hear how the people with no shame in their face, there's no shame to be like, yeah, I saw the person and I thought he was cute, and then the next thing you know, you're laying with the person, and then the next text they get, yeah, thumbs up the video, like the video, everybody. The next text they get is you the daddy. And the saddest part, the most, some of the parts of the show is when they bring in the two, the third, the fourth, the fifth man, and it's none of them. I'm thinking like, yo, sis, what was you did you get Spanish fly? Were you roofied? Like, how many men were you laying with within such a short period of time? It's my, you can't run around on one side and say your body, your choice, right? And then don't want any responsibility. I have to say that some of what I'm seeing, namely from social media and what is being shown willingly, is what some of these people are seeing to say, hey, these women are not who you think they are. Like, how do you stand up there next to your child and have to look at your child after you've tested like the third man and be like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm like, what? Like, lady, were you what? What? I am confused. I am utterly confused. Y'all help me to help. Friday night is paternity night for yo. Yeah, the worst is I watched one when the lady, her daughter was 21. They were older. Okay. And the older lady was sitting there like, yep, it's him. I know it's him. You know, the daughter thinks it's him. And they're older. And the judge is so respectful. She was like, I don't want to come out and call nobody out their name. Is there any other body it could be? How many people were you entertaining in this window of conception? So to the women, to the sisters, this is off. This is off. This whole thing, I could do what a man could do, conversation. Clearly not. Clearly not. Especially, so I think, this abortion issue is tied into this type of freedom with your body, and just all over the place, and you just flinging your front here, there, and everywhere, like you playing handball or tennis. You know what I mean? Definitely looking for something that you're not gonna find from the dude slinging the D. I'm just saying something is off. Judah, why you say that? Judah say those are the ones. Yeah, they raised by the old ones. Let me tell me if you guys can still hear me, because I'm gonna read this article real quick. Oh wait, no, the article is on this side. Hold up. The article is on this side. Oh my goodness, this joint is crazy. Some of these ladies, and they be up there lying. I mean, lying, like straight face lying. Okay? I'm like, yo, sis, you had me believing you. Like, it could be nobody else. And this is the guy. And I don't, and crying and tears and, all of these theatrical, bruh, you needed to get an Oscar, a Tony, something for this performance that you just put down. And this DNA come back and say, it's not this dude. Some of them willing it to be him. But the question is, you weren't raped. A lot of these stories that's coming forward, the person wasn't raped. They weren't molested. They engaged willfully with multiple different dudes at the same time. I'm trying to figure out why, though. Where are we going with this? I mean, look, Mosquito, don't start with me. Let me know if I can still be heard before I read this thing. Hold on one second. Let me make sure I can still be heard before I read this thing. Can I still be heard? Yeah. that follow Josephine Baker. Let me know if I can still be heard because I'm about to read this thing, but I'm moving my screen. So the name of this article here is Perspective. This was yesterday, no, 2 days ago. And they made reference to Handmaid's Tale. For those who've seen it, there will be more babies in a post-Roe America. This isn't a bad thing. But the Handmaid's Tale, what was happening is because the women pursued their premise was the women were pursuing their career. And because women were pursuing their career, then they had no time or no desire to have children. Just tuning in, you can hear me, cool. So because the women were pursuing their career, they had no desire or time to pursue children or to have as much children as they would have had they been barefoot and pregnant at home. So when in the movie I'm talking, when they passed legislation, what they were doing was encouraging the women. Actually, they took away the ability for the women to be autonomous, right? And they had to depend on a man. And by doing so, their duty to society now was to bring forth children. They wanted to increase the population. This is why I'm like, ooh, what's going on, India? This joint is looking real, blessed be the fruit. Yeah, if y'all watch the movie, y'all know what I'm talking about. Blessed be the fruit. You know what I mean? And so what happened was some of the women who weren't wife material, they made into the handmaiden. And the handmaiden, they took the scripture out of the Genesis, and the handmaiden had to bear on her knees, on the mistress's knees. So they kind of made a subset of society to be like Hagar, right? And so the wives would be like Sarai, and the handmaidens would be like Hagar, and the wife had to be present at the quote unquote ceremony when the man goes in and defiles the woman to impregnate her because their wives were barren. Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. This stuff right here is crazy. Anyway, as the nation waits for the Supreme Court decision that could return abortion law to the states, a curious drumbeat has quickened in the camps of abortion rights supporters who are warning about the America will look like post-Roe. There seems to be a general consensus among liberals that we will soon be living in Gilead. Now, Gilead was the name of the place that basically it was like from Chicago to Boston or something like that. They carved out the northeast part of America and they made them a whole new spot and they called it Gilead. It says, if you have not, I think it's on Hulu. I think it's still on Hulu. You could watch it. It's long, it's crazy, but it's worth a watch, yo. There seems to be general consensus. Okay, it says the patriarchal. That's what they also did. They returned everything back to a hard iron fist patriarchal system, right? The patriarchal dystopia from the novel The Handmaid's Tale. Like I told you, it first came out of a novel. It's unclear whose mind those stories are supposed to change, given that Americans have long been divided on the issue of abortion, and a sizable majority of us haven't changed our mind. They go into that. I was talking about what's most curious of all of these warnings, however, is how often they fall flat. And ironically, they sometimes serve as an argument for roles reversal. So this person at the time is arguing against, but we know as of today, it was overturned and is about to get real wild up in here. It says, take, for example, the recent article in the Washington Post about a Texas teenager who gave birth to twins, ostensibly because of Texas's burdensome abortion law. Talk to us about what y'all, I'm trying to figure out what happens after you do the booty. What happens after sexual intercourse? All of this exposure of the young children to sex ed and all of these things, I'm trying to figure out why we want to do but don't want to take care of what we've done. It's not easy. It definitely is not easy. But the burdensome part is to me is not the killing. It's like you're literally taking life. There's blood involved. The woman who I just saw an article with, who was talking, the woman is a doctor from the 1970s. She performed over 500 abortions. She said that part of the procedure when they do these DNC, what they call it, DNC or whatever, the suction vibration, whatever they're doing, when they're doing it, they have to count limbs. I thought nobody was alive in there. I thought nobody was home. Why are y'all counting limbs? To make sure you have 2 arms and 2 feet, to make sure that no pieces are left back inside. to make sure that you have the head and the torso and all of the parts, because if anything is left inside, it can cause infection. I thought that wasn't a living being in there. So what are you taking out if nothing existed? This is another one of humanity's plays to pretend so that we like I talk about, we have to feel okay about what we're doing. And if we know we're doing something wrong, it bothers our conscience. So we have to imagine or reimagine whatever it is that we're doing so that we can sleep at night. No, I'm not saying that many people, I've known people, I know people in my own family, people I know who have had to make or was forced to make a decision that never leaves you. So no matter how much we convince ourselves, even in today's climate where people are trying to convince us of what a woman is and convince us of what a man is, we have to reimagine this stuff. But the reality is, I was just scrolling before I came on here, and it was a guy. I was utterly confused. The guy had on eyelashes. It was a man. Look at it was a man who had on eyelashes and gel tip. That's what they call it, fingernails. Yeah. And he's doing a video on how to shave your beard. I'm done. I said, Mosai, what kind of world is this? What kind of world is this? Yo, the world is bugging right now, son. Um, the writer describes the plight of an 18-year-old Brooke Alexander out, who found out she was pregnant 2 days before the state's controversial quote unquote heartbreak law took effect, making abortion illegal after 6 weeks of pregnancy. Alexander, we are told, was deemed abortion minded by the clinic she visited for an ultrasound. That means she's pretty much decided to end the pregnancy before this desire was thwarted by the state of Texas. Her ultrasound revealed that not only had Alexander been pregnant too long to have an abortion in Texas, but her pregnancy was right at the line where American support for abortion precipitously drops. 28% of Americans say abortion should be legal. And again, with these polls, bruh, if you didn't, I wasn't in this poll. Were you guys in this poll? What do you mean 28% of the people you poll, not 28% of how many millions of people are in America? But I digress. Say abortion should be legal in the second trimester compared to 60% in the first. You know what's going on in the second? Let me just continue, yeah. According to 538, Alexander was 12 weeks pregnant with twins. What followed was not the unbridled happiness experienced by older couples who find themselves pregnant after years of trying, although Alexander's mother seemed to be ecstatic, but neither was the saga a preventable tragedy, which is how it seemed to be framed. I mean, it goes on to talk about this particular person and, how people feel that this is inconvenient. Sometimes when you have a child at a time that you did not plan to have a child, some people may feel as though it's an inconvenience, but because we are inconvenienced, does it give us the right to go to the levels that people have gone? I've seen people saying that they've never done the polls, so I don't know how they polling 60%, 28% of Americans when who you talking to. So those polls are also misleading as well. You have a lot of silent people who haven't spoke on the issue, but they want to put numbers out like people have. Now, what I wanted to also say is that in the historic study, because I'm gonna take it there, because they're like, well, this is gonna disproportionately affect Black people, African Americans. African Americans were the highest as it related to the abortions per population. I'm talking about the amount of abortions that were happening in the millions since the 70s up until now. The reality is that this is not a new concept. If you watched, and I watched few series, Handmaidens is one of them, after I realized that they were still on the air and Underground wasn't. There was an episode in the Underground that I actually, maybe I'll link to this video, because in that episode, Ernestine gets pregnant by a man when she goes to the rice plantations, and she's going to go look for an abortive substance. And this is what many enslaved peoples did, this was a form of resistance by chewing on or taking certain herbs that would cause the uterus to contract and thereby abort the child, right? So this thought of abortion is not new. The method in which the people are aborting children is new. But the thought of abortion and unwanted quote unquote pregnancies is not new. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit so that we can give context to that. If people have a desire, they're going to find a way. America can kind of try to wash some of the blood off the hands by not saying, I'm going to give you the way, right? If you're going to go look for it, you're going to look for it on your own. Like, it's the difference between giving somebody a drugs and they go get the drugs themselves. You know what I mean? So I guess to a certain degree, there's so much bloodshed. People don't understand that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So when we see what's going on in the world and we see what's going on in this country, right? And think that that it doesn't have anything to do with the things that are allowed, we are sadly mistaken. It's all connected. It's all connected. But I'm gonna get off the soapbox and go read the article. Right? Let me go over here and read this article real quick. This article is called Reproduction and Resistance, right? It's hidden voices, enslaved women in the low country and South and US South. It's if you're interested, I'll share the link. I like reading these things because, they're historically sound. Reproduction and resistance, just to see. Some people like, our mothers wasn't doing that. You a lie. Yes, they were. Yes, they were. Some were and some weren't. Right? My grandmother, before I read this, old people say things, but if you don't have the historical context, you're like, what are they talking about? Right? And she had 9 children. And in conversation, if any of her grandchildren or children would have children, and whatever the situation, she would say, bring them come, right? Bring them come means go through the process. You can't hear me. You can't hear me. I switched over. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Hold on. Can you hear me? Hold on. Let me switch it over on this one. I went over to a different thing, and that's probably why you couldn't hear me. All right. So let's read this article a little bit. Reproduction and resistance. Just to give this conversation context for those who are like, it's going to disproportionately, and then I heard in passing. I didn't even listen to it because I respect my blood pressure, but I heard in passing, I saw a community post from Cynthia G that is advocating for aborting black babies, namely male babies. I might have to touch on that. I don't understand what's going on, fam. I don't. Anywho, women knew that enslavers valued and depended upon the ability to bear children and increase the slave population. With this understanding, enslaved women participated in acts of resistance specific to the labor demanded of them, from avoiding sexual intercourse to terminating pregnancy to taking the lives of their own infants. Some women resisted slavery by working to control their participation in producing more enslaved children. So my point is, it's not a new thought. I'm gonna keep reading just to make sure you guys can hear me. It's not a new thought, okay? It's not a new thought. They had their reasons. It says, new mothers risk eventually separation from their children, and if they had daughters, they knew any sexual violence they had experienced could become their daughter's experience as well. Women use this kind of resistance, therefore, to combat slaveholders' control over their own bodies and protect their potential children from the horrors of bondage. At the most extreme end of the spectrum of enslaved women's day-to-day resistance lay infanticide. Before I continue, especially in the Caribbean, where I did the research in Jamaica, the slave masters were perplexed. The population, just like right now where you see a negative population growth, at this time they were dependent on these slave bodies and they were perplexed. Like they started to put laws, the same way we see now, this is nothing new under the sun, into effect, that if you are known to have aborted, or if you are known to be doing something that's hindering you from bringing forth children, there were repercussions, right? So this conversation is not a new one. Let's continue. We see similar things that happened in China. Now you're having too many children. And so what happened in China? Oh, we only say that you can have one child. And what were they doing? Infanticide. They were killing them if they were girls. They were sending them up the river. They were aborting. The same things were happening just the other, like in the 80s. Okay. So this is not just an America thing. Anyway, taking the life of one's own child rather than raise them enslaved. Infanticide speaks to slavery's horrific violence, pain, and trauma. And while some historians have perceived the practice as a form of resistance that operated, quote, within, end quote, the system, rather than by leaving it, along with suicide, infanticide conveys that some enslaved people tragically saw death as the only escape from bondage. Wait a minute, it wasn't only just them either, because I'm just thinking when you look about sacrificing your children to Molech, and you look at what the Bible talks about and that practice, and there's some that says when you do the historical research that it was Molech was this big molten metal uh, idol that they would, and the thought was that if they sacrificed the first their first child onto this burning hands of Molech, that they would get good fortune and da 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 da. So this whole child sacrifice, essentially what abortion is. You're sacrificing the life of the child so that you can pursue your career, so that you can, whatever the justification is, right? It can be valid, it can be invalid. It depends on who the person is, what it is, what's going on. Whatever the justification is, it's sacrifice, because you have to take the life of something so that you can have something else. And if you look at it in this way, it's no different than what has been going on all throughout history. Where we at? Let me make sure I could be heard. I'm on the other page. Let me know your thoughts on that so far. Is there a connection between all of this, or is this an isolated? Is this isolated in your thought process? Let me see. Where am I? Do 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 do. Okay. Overall, however, historical evidence suggests infanticide was a very rare action taken by mothers. Again, I don't know. In part because enslavers might have mistaken infanticide for other forms of infant death, and also because women who took their own children's lives would have faced severe punishment, even death, for committing these acts. The most famous examples of infanticide was the case of Margaret Garner, who took the life of her own daughter when caught trying to flee bondage with her children. Occasionally, too, Slaveholders accused enslaved mothers of being careless and accidentally smothering infants, resulting in death because they would sleep next to the infant at night. They would be tired, they would roll over, and they accidentally smother the child. The cause of these infant death, though purposeful infanticide, accidental smothering, or another undiagnosed health problem, is impossible to know. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things, the methods that they were using. Women also used their knowledge of plants and medicine, knowledge passed down generationally, as means of preventing pregnancy and attempting to induce abortions. It's like the morning after pill. All the pills are what? Herbal remedies that have been synthesized in a lab and put in a form that you can just pop in your mouth. What does it do? The same thing. Can be the same thing. The method may have changed. The vehicle by which you're doing it may have changed, but the outcome is the same. Where are we? hmm As a means of preventing pregnancy and attempting to induce abortions. Medicinal herbs were also used by the slave community to regulate menstrual cycles and assist in births. Their gender specific knowledge and cultural practices resisted dominant cultural norms. Women's actions also provided empowerment and control over their bodies. Isn't that what the conversation is about right now? This is what the people are screaming in the streets for with the signs that they do not have the right to govern their own bodies and someone else is dictating to them what they should do. Enslaved women had the same concerns and they took matters in their own hands in the same way. On cotton, now I'm not saying this is right or wrong or indifferent. I'm at this point, I'm just reading historically what has happened. Women's actions also provided empowerment and control over their bodies. On cotton plantations throughout the South, listen good because this is what I was talking about, included Sea Island cotton plantations in the Low Country, women chewed on cotton roots, the root of the cotton plant, to prevent pregnancy or end a pregnancy already in process. That was their morning after pill. This was their plan. Was their abort. They understood that this. I don't know who first fell on a cotton root and said, "You know what we should do? We should chew this." I don't know who was the first to do it, but somehow, some way, this information got to the people. Okay. Um, where am I? Women chewed cotton roots to prevent pregnancy or end a pregnancy already in process. Once free to discuss these secretive forms of women's resistance, formerly enslaved women across the South and Southwest discussed the commonness of deliberate abortions among the enslaved population. Many slaveholders therefore forbade women from possessing cotton roots, and when they discovered enslaved women chewing on storing cotton roots, women paid for their resistance with violent beatings. So again, it's the same thing like banning abortion. This is that time's way to ban it. If I catch you with this and I know what you're doing with it, it's going to be severe punishment. And today we're seeing if I catch you at these clinics, if I catch you doing this thing, you're going to pay severely. Same stuff. Beyond cotton root, women possess knowledge of their tinctures as abort- abortificants. Okay. Hopefully I said that right. WPA respondent Lou Lee spoke on how enslaved women tried to induce abortions to end unwanted pregnancy. They, quote, unfixed themselves by taking calamine and turpentine. What the box are you saying to me? I'm going to keep reading because this is rather interesting. This is rather interesting. If you read the book of Jashar, if you are biblically inclined or historically inclined, and you read the book of Jashar, you would see that in a time in the book of Jashar, there was a draught or a tea or something that the women drunk to render themselves barren. Because in that time, according to the book of Jashar, in that time, the barren woman, like it is now, the BBL woman, the woman with the flat stomach, the woman with the breast to her neck, that woman was more desired than the pregnant woman. So there was a draught that they would drink. Maybe I'll get that script after this one, just to show you that this thought has not gone anywhere in society. It just recycles from time to time to time. Let me go over here. And because we're entering into the Shabbat, you understand? We got to keep it all the way a buck. In them days, the turpentine was strong, and 10 or 12 drops would miscarry you. I don't know how many people out here have had a miscarriage. I've had a miscarriage, and it wasn't turpentine induced. That's some painful stuff. That's some painful stuff. So, I mean, wow. But the makers found what it was used for, and they changed the way of making turpentine. It ain't no good no more. And that was Lou Lee Rorick, the American Slave Supplement Series 2, Volume 6, Texas Narratives, Part 5. Westport Greenwood Press, 1979. Did you hear what she said? She was like, they found out that 10 to 12 drops of turpentine was going to cause you to miscarriage. But when the makers found out of this turpentine that you were misappropriating the use of turpentine to induce miscarriages, they changed the formula. And homie said, it ain't no good no more. What? Let's continue. Women also use herbs and tinctures to regulate their menstrual cycle in order to better track when pregnancy was possible. They also breastfed, sometimes against the slaveholders' demands to stop, in hopes of lessening the chances of becoming pregnant. Because we know, or if we don't know and we do know, the thought is if you breastfeed, that you are not ovulating because the menstrual is delayed and therefore you cannot get pregnant. But there are people who are able to get pregnant even though they're breastfeeding. So there goes that theory. While avoiding or ending the pregnancy was a regular form of resistance, enslaved women may have also deceived plantation owners into believing they were pregnant to lessen their workload. Because to the degree that they would lessen it, even though they would work them right up to delivery sometimes, they would think, especially at the time where there was not enough babies being born, and slavery, the importation of bodies were banned, they would give them a different type of work, one that would not, because heavy lifting in the first trimester can cause abortion, right? A spontaneous miscarriages. Where are we at? Where are we at? Let me know if you're enjoying this. Not enjoying it like it's good, but learning from it. Is it adding to our library of understanding of the fact that people would have us to believe that this stuff is new, but this stuff ain't new. This stuff is not new. Humans are humans. Uh, Low country agricultural journeys indicate that slave owners and overseers cut pregnant women daily task in half and recommended they keep them out of wet areas. Slaveholders and doctors' journals, along with letters of communication between the two, reveal that women used the possibility of pregnancy to lessen their workload. Enslaved women reported the discontinuation of their menstrual cycle to slaveholders or doctors, indicating pregnancy. And when a doctor was eventually called to verify the pregnancy, he was not always able to determine its stage of advancement. And what I find interesting is that this is an employer, and I've used that word loosely. And this woman's personal, what people are saying today now is personal business. She had to report this personal business, the what is going on with her body, to this random slaveholder because he owned her reproductive rights, essentially, is what I'm saying. Getting at. It's crazy. When an infant was eventually born, this was sometimes born too far outside of a normal pregnancy for the original report by the enslaved woman to be accurate. Other women who asked for a shorter workload by reporting their pregnancy then later reported that they had had a miscarriage. In both cases, it is entirely possible that these enslaved women did miscarriage, caused by their harsh working conditions. However, the high frequency of miscarriages opened the door for women to use the information as a form of resistance, and their widespread use of reproduction as resistance in many other ways indicated that some women resisted field labor through feigning pregnancy. Now, tell me if this is not still happening. Do some women tell the man that they're pregnant and they may not actually be pregnant because they want him to marry her, or they want something to happen, and then they say later on that, hey, they miscarried and that's why they don't have the baby anymore? There are many men who can give a story of a woman who told them they were pregnant and they weren't actually pregnant. So we're seeing this thought of feigning pregnancy in slavery as a means to, get this monkey off your back. You know what I mean? Like you want too much. She out here like, I'm pregnant. I know my body. She do. She out here like, I'm pregnant. Leave me alone. Yo. Anywho, women who appeared unable to become or remain pregnant may also have been resisting slavery. So the barren woman, okay? However, some women simply could not bear children, an emotional plight women face in a society that value children. And to think, to bring forth a child in this condition, you're between a rock and a hard place. Because you're either going to take matters into your own hands, or you're going to bring the child into a condition that you know for a fact is going to be of detriment to that soul. And I can't help but keep on giving us the connection or the parallel between the things we saw as well in the Bible. Why? Because for those who say, "Oh, what we do know, it was written long enough for us to see any continuity between the things that it said then and what's happening now." And so this idea of infanticide was also in the book of Exodus as it related to Pharaoh's reasoning for killing the Hebrew children, right? For killing the male children. We also see the tough decision in the narrative of Moses' mother to hide him because of the conditions, the harsh conditions for male children. So this whole conversation around aborting male children is not a new one. But so when we see it recycled again, we have to take a look at the energy that's bringing this thought process. No matter how many supporting information they may have, no matter how much fear mongering they may bring to you, this is not a new thought. And you have to say, where is the core of this thought process? What is because sometimes we cover it with all of these things and make people like, yeah, yeah, but you ain't going to be there when you have to deal with or atone for the blood that's going to be on the hands of the people for subscribing to whatever doctrine that one is espousing. It's dangerous out here. All for a YouTube check? Nah, bruh. Before that, all for a YouTube check? Nah, bruh. Mm-mm. Let's continue. And I'm talking about those who are out here. There is a mixer. I saw some people complaining that the women went out to this mixer and no men showed up. And the manosphere is like, yeah. So these doctrines that are being espoused on both sides, don't respect the woman, don't do anything for her, and abort children. All of these doctrines that are being espoused are having real world effects. And there's a consequence that's going to have to be paid for in the real world. But anyway, let me continue reading this thing. I should have brought some water. Let me see. Their value of children is reflected in the fact that some women sought the help of conjurers in enslaved societies and doctors in white society to improve the chances of fertility, while some women unable to have children indeed lamented the fact that they would never become mothers. All enslaved women also were well aware of their children's financial value to enslavers. And the last paragraph reads, reproductive resistance among enslaved women illustrates how enslaved women sought to challenge and defy their enslavers in whatever ways they could. The efficiency of their resistance varied depending on the method. That's why I said the desire is not going to leave. It's the methodology that's going to change with this way, what this overturn. You're going to still have people, before they was using wire hangers, before that they was using herbs, you're going to have people who's going to still be doing what they do, because the people will do what they do, won't they? However, enslaved women's decision to avoid or limit their number of pregnancy reveals their commitment to caring for their own bodies and controlling if and when to bring children into the system they endured. So this thought is not a modern thought. Where they like, it's the modern woman. It's the modern woman. It's not a modern thought. We just read about this whole thought in enslavement 400 years ago. It's not a new thought. I know, Judah, I apologize. I should have put a trigger warning on this, but my apologies. It's hurting. I understand. It is very depressing. The article, let me drop this article real quick. But again, my point is, I'm at the point where People, well, this is one article right here. This right here is the article I just read about enslavement in positive. If that's the article you're looking for, it's right there. You can read it and at your own discretion. My point in bringing this all up is that sometimes people will work us up and whip us up into a frenzy like this stuff is new. It's not. And if it's continuing to recycle, we have to look at the reasons that it is back up again. We read just now the reason it happened during slavery. Now we see the reasons that it's happening again. It's the same reasons. So now we're at the point where we can look at it and have informed discussions and conversations and not be gaslit into, and that's why you should vote for me. You understand? Because that's what people are going to take it. They're going to gaslight you into, and this is why, blah, 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 blah. No, it's human nature. There's something going on. I tell you what, when you look at Roman history, and I know Amun is all over the place, but it's all connected. Dots on this, all dots. It's like I'll be putting together crime scenes and there's all these little push pins on the thing. That I apologize for the way my mind works, but I don't apologize because that's the way my mind works. But check it out. When you look at the Roman history, there was a time in Roman history where they fell into this hedonistic, debauchery, inflamed society, okay, where they left the natural affections, to use Paul's terminology, and they went to these perverse affections. Paul speaks about leaving the natural affections for you to go to what is unnatural. This is what we're experiencing now. This is what was in the time of the Romans. Now, this island of Lesbos, you can look it up. What was happening was that the men were being with men, and they were only using the women for reproduction. This is in the Roman times, okay? Before that, the Greeks were running around doing naked Olympics. Look it up, okay? When you talk about the Olympic ceremony, when you look at the Olympic ceremony, when it starts off and they're going to their deities and they're lighting this fire, all of this is all interconnected. They bring it to us now like, ooh, watch them run so fast. When you look at the roots of this thing and what it's really about, it will give us pause. Mosquito, you better leave me alone. So when the Greeks was over there doing the butt naked Olympics, if you read in the book of the Apocrypha, you see how they were engaged in some of this activity and how circumcision gave you a way that you were a part of a certain covenant. So they had reverse circumcision surgeries. My question was, how did you know what his eggplant looked like? These jokers was running around butt naked. They was running around butt naked. So go inside. I'm coming. These jokers was running around butt naked. Okay. Furthermore than that, by the time they got to Roman times, these jokers was going off with their little paramours, with the little young 13-year-old and 12-year-old, and these old Roman soldiers was messing around with these little boys. Okay. Nothing new under the sun. Yep. The samurai. If you look up something called seaman warriors, when I looked, I was like, what in the world is going on in the world? My point is, it's nothing new. Everything we're seeing is coming from a similar source, okay? Not to get too conspiratorial on you. As I was talking about these Romans, so they left the natural affections, what sexual reproduction is for, and they took it straight to a pleasurable realm, which polluted it and corrupted it. The women were being left to their own devices, much like today. So these women, okay, were going to shoemakers. Look this stuff up if you think I'm bugging. And these shoemakers were making artificial man phalluses. The shoemakers were making artificial man phallus out of leather. And these women were going to an island in the Roman, off the coast where Rome is, and to the island, and the name of the island was Lesbos. This is where the word lesbian comes from. Y'all need to look this stuff up so you can understand that what we are seeing is nothing new. It's a cycle. And where the pendulum is swinging right now, where we are cycling into is what propelled the people into the dark ages after all of this debauchery was finished. Because when it gets to a height, this is what contributed to the fall of Rome. When it gets to a height and you can't get any more debased, it has to come down. It has to, because the earth cannot sustain it. So the thought of, let me get that part in the Apocrypha about the women drinking a draught that rendered them barren. Pause. Because I feel like it today. I feel like it today. What they say is historical. Hold on. I gotta get them this soup. I made 15 bean soup. What y'all cooking for dinner? I made 15 bean soup for these ones here. Uh, Hold on. That 15 bean soup be doing its thing. The women drank a draught. Hold on. That Book of Jashar. The Book of Jashar, chapter 2. Okay. Just to show you, people will say, well, it's old enough. The Book of Jashar is old, or Yashar is old enough for us to take a look at it and see the value in it for what it is. And today, the value is that there's nothing new under the sun. So let's jump down a little bit. Chapter 2. Hold on. Wait. Let's see what this is. All right, boom. All right. So I'm going to read. Yo, these mosquitoes are starting to be, they're starting to come for me. I'm gonna start at 7. Okay, this is Jashar. You can, let me give you the link. You can read it on your own time too, because I like people to read the whole thing. So, but hold on. Wait a minute. Will you go back? All right. This is the link for Jashar, and I'm just gonna read. An article about the fall of Rome said the same thing. Yes, sis. Yeah, I mean, I've done the research. I've done so much research over the years. I can't even begin to talk about what I know, because it's just too much. But when you want to know, like, how is she connecting these dots? Where's she getting all this stuff from? It's once you do the research and you go through all the spaces, and you go through the religious texts, and you go through the history, and you go through all of this, you start to see a pattern. You start to see a pattern. If we are doing it and we're not just sitting in churchianity, or we're sitting in under somebody's tutelage that has an objective, if we are really open-minded, we're going to start to see a pattern. Okay, 7. I just dropped the Jashar link. In those days, there was neither sowing nor reaping, and it's talking about people have fell off. Okay, people were tripping, basically, like they doing now. In the earth, did you hear these farmers talking about them being paid not to farm? Farmers right now, I don't know if you guys saw the 3,000 cows that dropped dead, quote unquote, from heat exhaustion, but there are farmers paying um they're paying the farmers not to farm. Anyway, in those days there was neither sowing nor reaping in the earth, and there was no food for the sons of men, and the famine was very great in those days. This is where it's going into, but this one is an engineered famine. Okay. And the seed which they sowed in those days, and there are certain people, Gates in them, who are buying up inordinate amount of farmland, right? We have the understanding of Monsanto and all of these people that's coming in to control the taking out the heirloom seeds out of population. I'm not going to go off point. My point is, we've seen a lineup, just like the Handmaid's Tale. It says, and there was no food for the sons of men, and the famine was very great in those days. And the seed which they sowed in those days in the ground became thorns and thistles and briars. It's like how when they went to India, Monsanto, that's why they ran them out. And they told them, yo, if you plant these seeds, you're going to get a big crop, this, that, and the third. The first year it happened. The next year, guess what? The seeds that they gave them when they gave over their heirlooms, they went in debt, number one. Number two, it could not grow without all of the other accoutrements that came from the company. So what happens? Their crop failed. And their crop failed. And some of the farmers, you can look this up, some of the farmers in India started to commit suicide because they were in so much debt, they didn't know how they was going to get out of it. But I digress. Let's continue. Where are we? And the seed, let me know if I could still be heard. You heard about the farmers and the cow. That means we on point. We on point, y'all. Let's stay on point now. And the seed which they sowed in those days in the ground became thorns and thistles and briars. For the days of Adam was this declaration concerning the earth of the curse of the Creator, which he cursed the earth on the account of the sin which Adam sinned before the Most High. And it was when men continued to rebel and transgress. It really boils down to rebellion and transgression. We are in the midst of rebellion and transgression. That's what it boils down to. Against the Creator, which is universal laws and principles that govern the earth. Day, night, light, dark. All of these principles, people want to go against these principles. They want to tell you a man can conceive and have a child, a woman can have a phallus. It's going against the principles that were set. But I'll continue. And to corrupt their ways, and the earth also became corrupt. And Enosh lived 90 years, and he begot Canaan. And it goes on, but I want to jump down for the sake of time. I put the link in the box. Hold on. Here. It's talking about people conceiving. I'll go. And Canaan reigned over the whole earth, and he turned some of the sons of men to service of God. And when Canaan was 70 years old, he begot 3 sons and 2 daughters. And these are the names of the children of Canaan. The first was Mahalalel, Enon. The third was Mered, and the sisters was Ada and Zillah. These are the 5 children of Canaan that were born to him. 17. And Lamech, the son of Methuselah, became related to Canaan by marriage, and he took his 2 daughters for his wives. Later on, you understand in Torah, you're not supposed to marry 2 sisters. But anyway, I digress. And Ada conceived and bare a son to Lamech, and she named him Jabal. And she again conceived and bare a son and called his name Jubal. And Zillah, her sister, was barren. This is the part I came here for. In those days, and had no offspring. And they're going to tell you why she was barren. For in those days, the sons of men began to trespass against the Creator and to trespass the commandments which he commanded to Adam to be fruitful and multiply in the earth. And some of the sons of men caused their wives to drink a draught that would render them barren, in order that they might retain their figures, and whereby their beautiful appearance might not fade. BBL thought process is not new. Liposuction thought process is not new. I'm coming. All of these things are not new. And look who caused it. It said the men began to trespass. So all of this conversation of looking at the women, you're off point. You have to look at the men, because the men are the one who are causing the women, compelling them to hold a certain standard that is against the way that we are supposed to be behaving in the earth. I'm going to put this one in the box. And when the sons of men caused some of the wives to drink, Zillah drank with them. And listen to this. And the childbearing women appeared abominable in the sight of their husbands as widows, while their husbands lived, for to attached to barren ones they were attached. I wanted to read that part, because that part is, go get an abortion. I don't want that child. Oh, your titties are sagging. Oh, you have stretch marks. It said that the ones who bore children, what was the whole Kevin Samuels conversation about? You having a child is as if you were the scourge of the earth. We are back at the same point in history, because everything is cyclical. I'll put that little part. This is from Jashar. Everything is cyclical. No? So we're back at the same point in history where the men are encouraging this with their taste and their appetites, and the responsibility. When it says be fruitful and multiply, that's her portion, and his portion is to take care of the family unit, right? And because he wants to do other things and he doesn't want that responsibility, then the barren woman, the woman who's on birth control, if you look at you drink a draught to render you barren, that's birth control. That's the pill. What, the box side? Ain't nothing new under the sun. You drink a draught to render you barren. And if she perhaps gets pregnant, I thought you was on the pill. What are you doing? Having a child makes you worthless. Didn't we just read this in Jashar? Let me get the other part. So my point is, if you look at, and some people may have questioned, when was Jashar written? We know it wasn't written yesterday. We know at least we got a few hundred years on this. That means that even this concept, this thought process is not something new. Let me get 19, because if we want to look at, everything comes down to the what is causing this? What is the core of this? And the core of it is when men began to trespass. I don't mean to get all biblical on people, but look, the answer is right before us. If we look across the landscape, we see people trespassing the natural laws because it is not advantageous to their understanding or thought process of what we, the people, should be doing. So they have made new laws and they have set new standards. And they're going against, what they say, contraceptive. Contra means to go against conception. They just told you they trespassing. Birth control, they told you they trespassing in the name that they gave it. But yet we still confused. Be not dismayed. I'm gonna come off my soapbox now because uh, let me put this, because this is a KS. This is KS right here. This KS quotes right here. And the childbearing women appeared abominable in the sight. Don't nobody want no single mother. Don't nobody want no women with children of their husbands as widows, whilst their husbands lived, for to the barren ones only they were attached. What's also interesting in this is that it said their husbands. Right now, people are doing this type of behavior for single people. Single people are doing this for somebody who does not even have any responsibility for you. But in the book of Jashar, this was the husband. So not every time that somebody is a husband doesn't mean that they're going to lead you in the right direction. In this particular story, in this narrative, this woman took this because she wanted to be esteemed in the sight of her husband. Interesting. I'll leave us with that. So hopefully, the conversation is one, because I put on my Facebook. I promise y'all, all I put on my Facebook was overturned and two emojis. A whole fight is over happening on Facebook right now. The only thing I put on Facebook was overturned and the nervous face emoji. That was it. That was it. And there's a whole fight over there. I don't understand what it is. I ain't even get in the fight because I don't got that time right now. But how people are, there's so much going on this topic. I think the potential, like I said, one thing I did say over there is that the potential for transformative healing is before us, because this, a fight because of how the men perceive it versus how the women perceive it. Some men are saying that when the woman conceived, they didn't have a say in the matter. So even if they wanted the child, the woman ultimately had the last say. And this Roe versus Wade, this freedom to abort the child without even the father's consent, was robbing the man of the opportunity to be fruitful and multiply, because the woman was stopping. This is why you always hear the manosphere and Kevin Samuels and them say that the woman controls the birth, right? She controls it. Why? Because she has the final say if she brings forth this child, even after she has conceived. So a lot of men feel as though they were robbed of the opportunity, because regardless of what they said, the woman said she was going to do it. If you remember, Lauryn Hill wrote a song, Zion. If you go back and listen to the song Zion, by the only album that Lauryn did, what was it about? It was about her conceiving at a time that people around her thought was going to ruin her career. They said what they said, Lauren, baby, use your head, but instead I chose to use my heart. Now the joy of my world. You know what I'm saying? When you listen back to the song, it's about her talking about not choosing to have an abortion, not choosing to believe that it was going to ruin her career and bring her child forth. Because there are many even Hollywood stars and musical people who were convinced that this is not the right time and you should just. And Chili of TLC speaks about this as well, that she was encouraged because of her age and you just started out and this is not the right time and that you should blah 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 blah. And there's a many of women who fell victim to the pressure, and then there's many women who took it into their own hands. But with that said, where we at? We got an hour. Let me go get these people their soup. You hear? I want to thank everybody for tuning in. There's much to read here. Let me know your thoughts. If you find anything, drop it in the box below. It is depressing, but it is also real. I will leave us with this. Should I? Nah, I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it at that. Let me like, subscribe, and comment, peoples. We still trying to get to our 7,000. We haven't hit past the 5 yet, so definitely like, share. We trying to bust through this. I know YouTube got something just sitting on my channel. I know it. They pressing hard. You know what I mean? They don't let videos out too often because the algorithm works weird. If your video slips out and it goes into the algorithm, then they put it before people. But if they don't push it into the algorithm and it doesn't go before people, and then that's what it is. So to have these conversations more where we can hear more voices and help more people and open the mic so people could come up and have more level discussions, when we have to push it. So let me push this and then I'll be right back.
Watching you, watching me, and I know you want to like, subscribe, and comment.
Now I'm playing, but for real, like, subscribe, and comment. Join the conversation. You don't know. Oh, chill. India said about the 15 bean soup. The 15 bean soup, right? If you go to the store in the bean aisle, the dry beans, in where do you have dry chickpea, dry lentils, all of this stuff like this, you're going to see a packet. It's going to say 15 bean soup. Now, I don't use the whatever little seasoning they put in there because that's nasty. But it has all kind of beans in there. And it may sound crazy, but that joint is a litty. People say, where do you get your protein from, bruh? You know what I mean? Where does a cow get protein from? He eats grass. So the 15 bean soup has a lot of different beans in there. But when you cook it down, cook it with your ingredients and your ting and ting. I pressure it because that makes life easier for me. I just put it in the Instapot. But you could cook it down with coconut milk. You can, that joint right there, it's a whole meal, fam. It's a whole meal. You don't want nothing more. Just drink some water and go to bed. But with that said, yeah, that's what the 15 bean is. You'll find it in the bean aisle, and just don't use that packet because who knows what's in it. The seasoning packet. It's like the what do you call it? What you call the seasoning packet? The ramen noodle seasoning packet. Don't use that. That joint is full of everything you don't want. But yeah, blessed Shabbat on positive reinforcement. Everybody go back and read over that. You know what I mean? It's nothing new. It's nothing new. Now, how do we break out the cycle? That's another conversation for another day. Judah, big up yourself. Everybody have a blessed night. I'm about to help my mother taking these groceries. All right then.